Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get back in here and get started. I want to mention to you, if you would like to get any of these slides or whatever, you see Brad, and I think he can get them to you or send them to you by email, or I can, either one. And also the outline of all that we just got through talking about is in those files too. If you wanted that, you can get that too. Because there were some things I left out, as I do as well, but tendency. But this is going to be a very interesting session. And the reason is because you're going to be a part of it. And I want to just to see, based upon what you see, and this is where you see, finally, brothers, whatsoever is true, whatsoever thing is honorable, whatsoever is just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent. Some versions have it a little bit differently. In some cases, the word honorable is reverend or noble. Some, the word just is also, in some versions is the word right. Commendable is the two words, good report or admirable. And then the virtue is excellent, and then the worthy of praise is even found in one word, praiseworthy. So here's what I want you to do, and your help in this would be greatly. Thinking about what you think about yourself, what you think about your spouse, and what do you think about your marriage. Now you can answer it either way, and the answers that I want you to get from you is, I think our marriage is, or I think I am, or I think about my spouse as, and explain why. But just think about any one of those three as it relates to all of these. And I want you to just go through it. And we could spend probably an hour or two on these and just talk about, okay, what do you think about yourself when it comes down to true? Well, I'm honest. Really? Are you? Are you really honest? But then you may think about true is one of those words that really is descriptive of our marriage. I mean, we're just totally honest with each other. I mean, we just talk about everything, kind of thing. But then it may be about your spouse. My spouse has been so trusting. I don't think I would ever believe they would lie to me or go contradictory to what our relationship is. That kind of thing. But let's just go through these. I didn't get a lot of answers. I put some information down here myself, but let's just think about this just a minute. And I need some help. If you don't start talking, I'm going to be point fingers. I'll just say that. I'm just one of those kind of guys. So let's describe each part of Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 as relates to marriage. Okay? Think about you. Think about your spouse. Think about your marriage. So the first one, whatsoever things are true? Tell me. Whatsoever things are true. Somebody say so. About what? What? Yeah, Tara?
So Michael is true in kind of a loyal sense. Like, I know that he's always going to be intentional about doing the right thing and figuring out, what's the godly thing to do every time there's a problem. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, he's true because that's dependable. He's predictable. He's going to take good care of us. He's going to do those things every time.
Okay. Right. Pretty well you know exactly what he may do. I do know that there are men that are pretty well predictable, that, okay, we know this is true about them. Okay? Now, so I'm going to pull off of that to say this. Do you take this predictability of your husband, say he's going to be this way, he's going to do this, and it's like a, step 1, step 2, step 3. You've got all that down. Do you use that as a wife as a means of insulting, embarrassing him, or do you really do think that is so important about the consistency that your marriage needs? Sometimes there's so much up and downs. I don't know if he's going to think this way. I don't know if he's going to do this way. I don't know where he's going to go. I don't know if he's going to hold on this job. I don't know if he's going to hold that job. All those kind of things. That consistency is very, very much a secure moment for a wife. So that's good. Okay. True. What else? True what?
Don't know for any one of these,
No.
you, spouse, or marriage?
Yeah, either one of those three. Either one of those three. As it relates to just the word thinking on true, on what is true. Yes, ma'am.
I know that our marriage is true in the fact that even though, because we're human, even though we've had lots of issues throughout our marriage, we've been married 38 years, that we're in it for the long haul.
Okay.
That we've had marriage counseling multiple times, because no matter what, our marriage was going to stay together, no matter what.
Okay.
We were willing to work on staying that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And to get to that point has to be an intentional thought. And like we talked about a while ago, the intentionality of the faithfulness gets you to that point. But it's true. This is what's true. Yes, sir.
Going with that, I think our marriage, first and foremost, the basics of it is our love for God.
Okay.
We both have a love for God that is at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that kind of foundation, that you can pretty much build and continue to grow. So.
Yes. Yes. True to Scripture. True to the example of Jesus. Right. Sure, Brad?
You made a comment years ago about your marriage and dying your marriage, and you said that, I guess I'm talking about me when I try to think about if it's important to her, it's important to you. So I keep trying to bear that in mind. Yes, any kind of situation or decision we're going to make, it's important to her.
Yes.
It should be important to me.
So, coming off of that, think about, okay, if your wife or your husband expresses a feeling to you, do you think, you don't feel that way? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Or you just disregard it, say, I can't believe you feel that way. I don't understand why you feel that way. And maybe that's the difficulty, is you don't think or try to get into their thinking, which is very true about. You're not wanting to get into her thoughts. You don't want to think her thoughts and even understand. So that's good. Whatever else is true. Yeah, Kyle.
True thing about Holly is that she puts a high regard for care of her family. So it would be for the children or for myself to just provide nourishment or to provide care. Well, she puts a high regard on caring for the family.
Yeah. Okay.
I was going to kind of say the same thing about Tara. She's very calm. She takes care of all of us and puts our needs ahead of hers.
Okay.
But she doesn't call for the praise.
Right. Okay. Okay. Good. All right. Yeah, Jason. I'm sorry. Was you saying something? Yes. I'm Michael. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay. So I would say there's a lot of stability that we have in our marriage. Over the years, our family has looked very different. We've had a lot of changes and kids in, kids out, and just all kind of craziness from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've been able to be that source of consistency for each other, and that helps us to get through a lot of the storms of life.
Okay. Yes. Michael.
It requires a pretty secure, entrusting place to be completely transparent.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think about truth as far as honesty, you can find yourself in a place where it's hard to be honest.
Yes.
And to get back to a place where you're secure enough to be fully transparent. Anyway, that's what I think about when I think about truth.
Okay. That's related to you, right?
Sure.
What you're saying. Okay. All right. Related to you and the transparency of your marriage about the truth, being very, very open. Okay. Very good. Let's go to the next one. Let's talk about think about the things that are honorable. Reverend, noble, some versions use that phrase. What's noble about you or your spouse or your marriage? I mean, even in light of all the tense moments that you may have had, what's so honorable? And in other words, you're elevating it. You're raising it up to a level. What's so reverent about it? Yes, ma'am.
He is very calm,
Okay.
cool and collected through all of it, which is why God stuck him with me.
Stuck in with you. Okay, you're stuck on me. Okay, I'm stuck on you. That sounds much like a song I heard.
But he keeps that, it is very, I find it very honorable, but even in what sometimes I can make tense moments,
Mhm.
or other outside tense moments, he is just very level-headed and can think through things before things are said or done, or
Okay. Okay, good. Good. Yes.
Well, for me and my wife, I just think about some days I'll come home from a busy work day, you know, and my wife will be sitting there studying her Bible. To me, that's honorable, and she feels reverent toward God
Yeah.
and His Word,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it's just she's a good example to us, me,
Yeah. Right. Good.
you know, my
See,
kids. So
I think that's good. I think that is valuable because this is really, when you think about something that's reverent or honorable or noble, you're raising it to a level of, in other words, you're trying to think about what gets it to this point. What is it? And that's a really good point about the spirituality that brings it to the level of what God wants it to be. In other words, you don't want your marriage just to be average, normal, just like everybody else's. We're called upon as disciples in our marriages to raise it to an excellent level. Excellent. Not normal. We're not, okay, I got a C. I'm fine with C. No, you're coming to A+++. And raising it to that level is what you see Amanda doing when you come home. So that's great. That's good. Yes, ma'am.
I feel like Darren throughout our marriage has always honored his vows that he made to me.
Okay.
And from the silly ones that he said that he would, you know, try to keep a smile on my face.
Okay.
So if I start talking about the Smoky Mountains, the next thing I know, he's planning a trip
Yeah.
to the serious ones of standing by me with my mother
Okay.
through her sickness. He's,
Yeah.
you know, always honored his vows. And even if we do have like a spat, you know, ever forget there was a time in this building that he thought that I was mad and I thought he was mad. And,
Yeah.
you know, but when it came time for prayer,
Yeah.
at the close of service, you know, we always raise our hands in prayer. And, you know, even though he thought I was mad at him,
Yeah.
and I wasn't,
Yeah.
but he reached for my hand.
Okay.
And I'm, you know, he's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. Yes. The point you make about thinking what somebody is thinking, or you thought somebody was, so you take that moment of which you're mistaken. Well, let's say for example, maybe they are, or maybe you're mistaken that they're thinking you think they're mad. Yet, what brings it to the point of being honorable is that you approach it the same way. It's not like, okay, you figure out why you're mad, get over it, and we'll be back to where we should be. You take it to a level of prayer that answers what really being noble is like and reverent in your marriage. It's not like you're just going to take it and, okay, I got to wait for 6 hours till this all, fizzles out, fades away. Maybe we got to sleep on it, it'll be okay. But you approach it in a reverent way when there's moments of conflict, which brings it to, this is what you think about it. It's not like, okay, that's the way it always is. I got to give him 5 hours to get over it, and we'll be fine. But approaching it, thinking about it differently, makes a much better relationship for sure. So you're pointing out something very, very important there. Yes, sir. Where'd you go? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Just through like health struggles or sickness, just the faithfulness and the love and the care and the trust that nothing is going to be too hard for God to handle. Well, for him, because of God.
Yes.
Working through him, like just feeling that through just the struggles of the flesh and pain of life, I think is so honorable and such an amazing way to experience God's love.
Yes.
Well,
And that is, you said a very key point there at the end about experiencing God's love through this. Oh man, this is marvelous. When you think this, you get past verse 8, you go to verse 9 where he says, okay, these are the things that you've seen and heard and saw in me, these things do. And as a result, you begin to experience exactly what this changing thinking brings. And that love of God is absolutely essential. So what it's doing, and you bring out a very good point about how this is duplicating who God is within our marriage. We think, okay, we're the ones supposed to be loving, we're in God's image, but yet our marriage, when it's together, it's reflecting the same thing. And that love is demonstrated with how we think. What about, Ryan?
I actually have a hard time separating out all those words. Like, I had to look up the definition of true just to see how it would apply to your question.
Yeah.
Being accurate and without variation.
Yeah.
And to me, like, accurate and without variation, since I'm so literal, and honorable all go hand in hand. The fact that, in this world, she doesn't go outside of my marriage, I don't go outside of my marriage. We are faithful to one another. It's huge. I mean, we're inundated with it. Constantly you see couples that are divorced, that are going through divorce, that are having extramarital affairs, doing things that aren't honorable. She doesn't do that, so she's accurate.
Yes.
She's without variation, and I value that immensely.
Yeah.
Just having that goal of being committed to one another and being able to compromise and apologize when we get mad or whatnot holds a lot of those words.
Yes.
True, just, pure, lovely, commendable, virtue, and honorable. But keeping our vows is it checks that box for honorable.
Yeah. Good point. Faithfulness, loyalty. And one of the things about this that will make a big difference is how your children perceive what marriage will be when these things are done. How their perception of marriage comes as a result of the one that they live with. And all of us have been affected by the one from where we came, where it was, even if it was a facade, or if it was definitely a loving, caring, and tender one, or if it was, I just grew up with my mom or my dad, and that's it, or whatever it may be. We've all got a frame of reference, and that's why I said at the very beginning in the last section that we want to move away from maybe what we've heard, what we've seen, what definitely has made an impact upon us. But where do we go from here? Should we think about it? How should we think? So go to the next one. What's just? Think about what's just or what's right about your marriage, or about you, or about your spouse. What's right or just? Here we go. Say something. You look like you will, but I don't know. I may not. Give me a second.
I don't know if it fits in just. I'm like Ryan. Like I get them a little bit mixed up. But part of our premarital counseling was commit. You're not just committing to. You're not really committing to each other. You've got to commit your life to God.
Yeah.
And then we put that very front. And then like all your lessons about the pyramid. The closer we both go to God, that has been the forefront. And so when I'm struggling, if he's committed to God, in helping me through that and vice versa. And so it helps get through those tough times or those impatient moments or whatever.
Okay, good. Yes, go.
She does the dishes and I do the laundry.
Good, that's good. So that's right.
My point with that is that we work together.
Yeah, okay.
We try to sort of divide and conquer.
Okay.
We just both put forth an effort, and it wasn't always that way. We've had to sort of grow into that.
Yeah, right. So if you're married, if you are thinking, number one, if you're thinking what's right and or what's just, and your spouse is, then how's that going to affect your marriage? Let's say, for example, somebody wants to come in to your life somehow, some way. It could be a family member, could be a friend, could be somebody that introduces something to you that's immoral or that's false or that is in some way definitely corruptible. And when people want to bring that into you, are into your marriage as a couple, then what do? Hopefully you do you think about what's right. Because you were thinking right already, and your husband or your wife is thinking the very same thing. You're thinking about what's right. So we're going to do collectively, it's like you say, this conquer thing, we're going to do what we can to push that out. We're going to fight against that. We don't want Satan coming in and ruining us. You know? So here, you think about the case with Adam and Eve in the very beginning. Eve is tempted by Satan and confuses her with what God said versus what he says, and then he comes along and has so much about this fruit that's attractive that she takes it. And if she'd held to what God said was right, then that would have never happened. That would never happen. And she would have kept doing the things that were right. Wouldn't cause either her to be in pain and anguish and sinful and guilt and shame, and her husband wouldn't have been involved with it either. She wouldn't have brought it to him and given it to him. So if what you're thinking about is right, yourself, and your husband or wife is thinking about the same thing, you're going to remove everything that's going to cause any kind of division, first of all, between us and God, and then also any kind of division between us and, between husband and wife, those kind of things. And there are people, please know, there are people that want to come in that want to attract your husband away from his wife, or want to attract the wife away from her husband. That's not right. And they fill the mind of your spouse with things that shouldn't be there. It's kind of like what, Ron, you're saying about being faithful to your spouse. So you're going to stick with what's right. You're going to think always on those things. Because the lust comes in sometimes and wants to take you in a different direction to what's evil. Yes, ma'am.
I see those words just right together. Some translations in Genesis where it talks about the helper fit or the helpmeet, it says a helper just right for him.
Yeah.
And so if you think about right as in like a right fit, oftentimes you find that your differences, spouses will find that their differences can be points of division.
Yes.
Or if you look at them in a more positive light, one fills in where the other is lacking. So one will be logical, one will be emotional, one will be detail-oriented, one will be big picture. And so thinking about that along with the roles that God assigns to marriage in terms of leadership and submission, like when two spouses come together, they're just the right fit.
Yes, good point. Yes, ma'am.
Kind of like Tara was saying, when I see the words just and right, for some reason verses of just refining and like iron sharpening iron comes to mind, just because of when you do have the thought that we're encouraging one another to have fear of seeing ourselves as God sees us and our spouse as God sees them and things like that. Hopefully that process of refining happens. You're both drawing near to God.
Yes.
He's able to transform your mind, rewire it,
Yes.
renew and you know what I mean? Hopefully that process happens through struggles. So you're growing more into the image of Christ.
Yes.
And so it might be a stretch, but to me, like, we're only righteous and just and pure through Christ.
Yes.
So surrendering ourselves and our hearts to allow Christ to work and mold in and through us, then should do that with one another.
Yes.
So that exhortation, like exhorting one another, should happen in the right way. Do you know what I mean? I feel like our marriage has been a blessing in the sense of more righteousness and refinement.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, refining, making it right. Yeah. And Diane, I've always told young people when they're getting married or thinking about dating and moving into, and I'll talk about this maybe Wednesday night, about if you're looking for a young boy to be a husband or looking for a young lady to be a wife, is that you're trying to make sure you get to find the right person, just right. You want to make sure they're, perfect, whatever the words are. But the real issue, the real matter, the crux of the relationship is that you be the right person before you find yourself with another person that you want to be right. It's always, I'm trying to find the right person. But what about you? What about you? You need to be the right person, and we'll find the right person. Yeah, right.
At a young age, I determined that to be being morally right. Is I would only choose a spouse to consider married if they were godly.
Okay.
They had to be a Christian, and they had to be. It just makes your life simple if you're not trying to convert another person. And I'm just speaking from my own personal situation. I was bent on finding somebody within the Church of Christ.
Yeah.
Because I recognized at a young age, based on my environment outside of my nuclear family, that needed to happen. And it's the same thing like Chloe. Like, look, we start talking about that stuff. You don't think you can change somebody.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
I know you've heard that.
Yeah.
Even woke neurologists will say that.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Oh yeah.
And I've heard that. I heard that from one of my closest buddies' wife, who is a neurologist, and that's the thing. It will probably be a Netflix special one day. It's the worst divorce I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
She's awful.
Yeah.
But she's not morally right. Sorry, I don't mean to be so harsh, but it is appalling that what happens in these situations.
Yeah. They're ready to tell
But
it.
just being morally right to me is drives home that point of looking for a Christian to begin with.
Okay.
That everything that points back to God.
Yes.
You won't have any of it without God.
Right. Well, what about purity? What do you think related to pure, as he talks about here? What's pure about you? What's pure about your spouse? What's pure about your marriage? Some of which we've kind of talked about related to faithfulness and not having relationships with other men or other women, having somebody else come in and destroy what you and your wife have, you and your husband have. But how would you define purity? Or what is pure in your marriage? Yeah, Jason.
I would say purity, using the definition of holiness.
Okay.
You know, and so thinking God designed marriage to make us more holy.
Okay.
And so in this marriage, we're able to help each other through this. From some of my comments earlier, Meredith has continued to do that with me, and it's just been really helpful to know that both of us, the standard by which we make decisions or just how we interact with the world, that we are trying to be holy, trying to be an example to others, but also to just have holiness in our relationship together.
Yes. That holiness elevates it. Being sacred is absolutely important. Yes, sir.
To me, when you study together as a couple and really try to develop your spiritual connection and understand the relationship that God designed for us, you end up, you get to a point where you see purity in your marriage, that relationship where it's like you long for it, you know, it's just like, I gotta take it to the next level.
Yeah.
You know, there's just something pure about it, and it's hard even to explain.
Yeah. So let me I'm going to use this as an example here in just a minute. When it comes down to being pure in marriage, I'll give you an example of what hopefully that you're driving at here. As a husband, what would you do if there was this temptation for illicit images on TV, computer, phone, whatever? What would you do? Would your thought be toward you? Oh, this is attractive, this is intriguing, or would it be your thought toward your wife and to your marriage? And when it comes down to women and what it is that you wear, when you think about the idea of pure, Diane has asked me, I don't know the numbers of times, however it been, she asked me, she says, how does this look? And it sounds like a loaded question. And then, okay, you're going to get, any answer is not going to be the right one, but, this, whatever. But I know what she's asking. Is this too tight? Is this too revealing? Is this too whatever? All those things that go with that, regardless of whatever it is that she asked me, what do you think? What do you think about this? So I know what she's asking me, from me, from my standpoint as a man, what that will be. So if I think about me, well, anything will do. Anything will do. But to think about it as she is presented to the world is a very, very important thing to me. A very, very important thing.
So let's get this right. You think you read her thoughts?
Yeah.
That's what you just said.
Yeah.
You know,
So I'm coming to help her because she wants me to think about the pure things that relate to her. And I want to keep that going. And she needs to help me on the other side to keep the pure things going as well, to think about it. And that way, collectively, our marriage is going to be this thought of purity. Yes, Jonathan?
When I think about purity, I think about the way the scripture talks about, refining fire, and the way that gold is refined and purified through fire, and how we're purified through challenges. And I think our marriage is the same way.
Yeah.
When our marriage and our relationship, our lives face challenges, then there's a choice there.
Yeah.
We're either going to be purified by it, we're either going to shed those impurities and those things that hold us back.
Yes.
Or we're going to be purified and we're going to be drawn more close together because we're getting rid of those impurities.
Yes.
And the challenges that we've faced in our marriage and our relationship, they started pretty quickly after we got married. Health issues and different things that we've gone through. And thinking back on our relationship, it started, the ability to come through those things purified started from our first date.
Mm-hmm.
When Natalie challenged me and said, look, you've got to tell me whether you're interested, whether we're going to pursue this or not. And she forced me to open myself up and to get rid of a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, one of the strengths of our relationship has always been our ability to communicate and to work together through things and to be honest with each other.
Yes.
And that's how we got through those challenges, and that's how we became closer because of those challenges. Is because of, starting from day one, we have that openness and honesty with each other.
Okay.
And so when I think about, purifying our relationship, I think about those challenges and how at every one of those turns we had a choice to make: to be purified, to be drawn closer together, to be drawn closer to God, or to drive barriers, drive wedges.
And the two of you, just like it is with all of us, it's a matter of taking our marriage to the point that we're working through this together. It's not like this is I'm sorry you got this disease, or I'm sorry you got this sickness, I'm sorry you're having to deal with this pain, whatever it is, you got to work your way through it. We're doing this together. We're working through that purifying process. And it may very well be that God's not just giving it to the person that has it, that God's giving this to us for what we need to go through it together and draw us close together, which we may not have had before. And I think I can speak for some of you other couples that have probably gone, not necessarily what they have, but you've gone through some difficulties and struggles as a result that you've come out on the other side purified. And there have been things that you have removed, things that you've gotten rid of, attitudes that you experienced, and then there's been a joy of which you never had before. There's been a peace, there's been a sense of comfort, there's been a sense of assurance. All kinds of things, and you've also even drawn closer to God. All those things come as a result of that. So let's talk about this one. Whatever lovely. Everybody's got to say something about this one. Surely, whatever lovely. What's so lovely about you or your spouse or your marriage? Nobody here has talked about themselves, which I think that's wonderful. Yeah, maybe. What's so lovely?
I view our marriage as lovely. I hate to think where I would be without her. And likewise, I hate to think where she would be without me. I think God put us together for whatever reason. And, it's just, I've been very blessed to have her, and I think she would say she's been blessed to have me. And we would like to, and I don't want to brag on you and Diane, but I'm going to. I think all of us would like to, I don't even say your name without saying her name.
Oh, yes.
And
That's
I
a
would
good
like
point.
for people to think of us that way.
Yes, yeah.
You know, say Mickey without saying Tom.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I think that's good. That's a good point. Very good point. What else is lovely about your marriage? I mean, that's a very valuable point to see people in the world, even Christians, would not think about one without the other. You know, they'll talk about they do this or they do that. And it's not like he's this and she's that. Yes, sir.
I looked up the definition of lovely, and it's to be acceptable or pleasing. And I find Mary very pleasing to the eye, obviously, but also pleasing to be around. We have a lot in common on multiple levels, and I got to see an illustration of these feelings between us. She had to drop something off to me at work a few weeks ago, and she was talking with the secretaries there, and I had a chance to talk to one of the secretaries the next day. She said, when you came up to the office to get that from your wife, it looked like you were happy to see her. And
is that what she said?
Yeah. And I said,
look like you're happy to see her.
I said, happy to see her, like she was surprised. I said, I felt like that was a good illustration of,
Lovely.
Yeah, she's right. Yeah,
good. That's good. That's good. Yes, sure. Yeah.
So growing up in a home that was full of division and conflict, for me, it's especially lovely to have a peaceful home, a peaceful marriage that our kids we like to be together, all five of us. And to me, that's especially lovely because that was not, when I was Jackson's age, I tried to be gone, with my friends. But just kind of during the shutdown, the pandemic, you'd see a lot of people like, I got to get out of this house, I got to get away from these kids, I got to get away from my husband or wife. But we enjoyed that time kind of being shut up together. Like, those are my people.
Yeah.
And so experiencing that unification and that peace as a grown up, and I didn't have it as a child, is something that's lovely for me.
Yes. Good. Yes, sir.
Never saw myself as a good person growing up. I was not raised with just being affirmed. And so the fact that Amy found me lovely was just such a beautiful thing to me.
Yeah. That's marvelous thought. One thing, there are 3 words that normally express probably what this loveliness is. You know what they are? It starts with I. I love you. I love you. Those 3 words definitely, hopefully represent this. But let's go further here. Like I said, we can go a long time. But what about thinking about you or your spouse or your marriage commendable, of good report, and admirable? Yes, ma'am.
Of course, Derek wasn't in the church, we got married. And also, you don't know, if he hadn't been a Christian, you don't really know how he'll be thought of at work or places like that.
Yeah.
But once he became a Christian, it was just like, I think I see this more in people who find it, they weren't raised in the church. So everything just means so much as far as God goes. But everywhere we've been and every work he's done, when he's left, the people come up to me and go on and on about what a good leader he was. And there's always the thought of what a good person, how he handled everything on the above. And it just followed. In fact, when we left here, my kids were over there and they looked and said, "Are they talking about that?"
You get
But
that
I'm telling you,
remark.
everywhere. And then there was a doctor the other day, just happened to see him out, and she said, "Derek, I should have told you more. How good you were at the hospital, how you brought things together, and what a good person." And that comes over to my marriage and how commendable that Derek is as a man, and that, he's just I can depend on that, and he's a good report. And
yes, yes, good point, yes. Marilyn?
Houston's gotten notes from students, but one most recently was from somebody who is either graduated or graduating, and she wrote, you know, what she wants for her future, and that was to have a marriage like mine and his.
Mm-hmm.
And she's never met me, but knowing that he has mentioned me and our marriage in such a positive light enough for her to desire that for her future, and wanting a godly husband too, and a godly marriage, spoke volumes.
Yeah.
But also, anytime they find out Jason's my husband, they're like, "Oh, I love Mr. Richmond."
Yeah.
Like,
right. Good.
all the time.
Yeah. I'll give you one little quick statistical thing related to that. Gen Zers, which some of you are raising Gen Zers now between the ages of, born in age, what was it, 1998 to 2010? Something like that, 2011. Those are individuals today that I understand are being raised by which they'd love to see a good marriage because they've been dealing with trouble in the past. That's what they're looking for right now. And that honesty and witnessing that, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, I'd like to have it. Yes, ma'am.
Along those same lines, I don't want to brag on Mickey and Donna, but I'm going to anyways. You know, I moved here, I don't really know anybody, and people meet me and they ask, you know, what's your name, and I tell them, and they say, you're related to Mickey and Donna. Yeah, I'm married to their son. Well, there's no better people, there's no better marriage than Mickey and Donna. And so that legacy, it extends beyond, I think, we think about ourselves, we think about our marriage, but that affects the widespread ripple effect of what we're doing kind of in our own homes, carries on to, you know, people. Well, you know, Michael must be a great husband because his dad is, you know. It extends far beyond what we know and paints a picture of the gospel for that, like you said, the kids who were saying, I want a marriage like that one.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
We got married at a very young age. And then 15 months later, I was still a teenager, our first child came along. I admired in Robbie the fact that he would work 2 and 3 jobs and go to college so that I could stay home with our children, because he didn't have that. And I've always admired how strong and the hard work. And then we did have to work on our marriage later because we didn't get to work on it because we were so young. But I've always admired that he thought of our children and their spiritual life first.
Yeah, right. And the mom that went with them. That's the mom. Yes, Jonathan.
One of the things that I've always admired about Natalie is she seeks out things that need attention. Whether it be things in her marriage, things for me, you know, something that maybe I've neglected because we're busy or whatever, but she seeks out people in the church who she sees they need attention. They, you know, something about them, whether they're new, whether they're, you know, just maybe not fitting in, not, you know, having a hard time finding their place or whatever, whether it's kids and her, you know, her kids bringing groups that, you know, maybe aren't quite fitting in or whatever. She seeks them out and makes people feel noticed and appreciated and cared for.
Yeah, good, very good. Yes, sir.
Something I find commendable, admirable about Keely is just her love for God. Just how she's helped me just in my life. And for when we first got together, now in our marriage, I just find that very admirable. Just her love for God. And I think they're following lovely, pure, just, honorable, true. They're following all of them. And that's just something that I very found commendable, admirable.
Good. That's great. Yes, ma'am. Renee?
One thing about Jeff is commendable is, you know, we've been married for years, and, you know, the longer you've been married, the more issues that come up. You know, the illness, you know, things that I went through, he's always there for me, never question, you know, make a doctor's appointment. I said, you know, I hate for you to pull away from work for these days, you know, working with, you know. And plus going through you know, the illness of his dad. He was always there, night or day.
Yeah.
You know, just never questioned. And then, you know, his mom, of course, his mom is still living, but, you know, he gave her a lot of money to put her in the best care here in Somerset that he could until her health developed to the point she had to be moved to a nursing facility, but you still check it out, make sure it's the best one. I mean, it's just being there and, you know, doing those things, you know, that's really commendable, and I see that and I appreciate it.
Good, that's good. Yeah, Coach?
Well, so my wife and I when we first got married, we were really strong-headed. We, you know, both of us sort of like type A personalities. You wouldn't think it, but, you know, we used to get in arguments playing board games with Luke and Daphne all the time.
Well, you know, sometimes the extrovert and the A+ personality, you get two of those together, you got some, you know, you're not opposites, you're the same, you know, but you got together.
Well, back
those are
the
good.
first of the year, we sort of had kind of gotten, you know, sort of separated apart, not really physically, but just mentally and spiritually. We kind of got sort of separated and just didn't have the best relationship. And she came to me and said, you know, I think we need to start studying together more. We did, and I commend her for that. But for anybody who, you know, is having a hard time in their marriage, it's commendable that you're here, and you should study because it's worth it.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. That's babe. That's babe. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I can. I want to commendable about Barry. Of course, our marriage was blended, and he kind of stepped into the role of my boys, stepped in helping them and everything, but also stepped up when I had all my surgeries and everything. Always there, never complaining, always actually almost making light of the situation, making me feel not, because I was always feeling like a burden, so he always was like choking and, you know, thank you for doing this with me, rather than he doing it for me, that type of thing. Kind of turning around like I was doing him a favor by letting him take care of me, you know. So that he's always doing that, but it's just that I admire that, and he's always helping all of our kids also too. So he's always there. He's fair, talking about fair and just. If he ever does anything or says anything and he realizes that he misthought it or judged it or had the wrong idea or whatever, he goes back and, believe it or not, most men don't do this, I think, that he apologizes. He says, I guess I was wrong, I looked at that wrong, I'm so sorry about that, or whatever. Yeah. So it's kind of like I kind of commend and admire all that just because you didn't have to.
Yeah, right, yeah. And you brought up a good point about the being just is a point where it's like, in Romans 5 verse 1 it talks about by faith we're justified. And there's a lot to be said for how a person realizes their transgression and their sin, and they want to be justified. They want to be just before God. They want God to think just about them. Well, you got to come to the source by which the justification is made, so that all things will be right. So there's a lot to be said for when there is a conflict, when there's a difficulty, when there is whatever disagreements, whenever there's elevated anger, whatever it may be that comes into a marriage, then what we do to bring about the justness of this. You know, somebody said things that they didn't plan to say, didn't want to say, but it said. Somebody behaved in a way that didn't want to say, behave, but they did. So how do you bring about that to be right? How can we make this right, as we would say? Well, you got to come through the parts of repentance and confession and apologies and let mercy flow to it in order that we be right. In other words, whenever there's a moment of conflict, we don't say, okay, what are we going to do now? We come to the point of what's right, what we're going to do to make this right, what we're going to do to make this just. Is very important. It's not, and it means both people got to think about it. Both people have to think about it, but have to think about your marriage as a whole. And then I'm going to talk about this one real quick: is virtue, worthy, praiseworthy, excellent. Some of which comes into this commendable, admirable part. good report. And I bring this one up because Philippians chapter 1, verse 9, verse 10, well, Scripture brings this up. I shouldn't say I bring it up. But I want to bring this one up because of Philippians 1, it talks about bringing your marriage up to the excellent level. It's not a matter of being average. If you apply all these things, it's going to be definitely praiseworthy. It's going to be something that other people will talk about, maybe more than you. But yet, you will be able to talk and think about your spouse and elevate them to a level of which they're not. Back to what you were saying about you would love to have had somebody admire you and say something admirable to you and gain some kind of affirmation, but never had it. Well, is there anything excellent about your spouse that needs to be brought forth that you may have not spoken before? Is there anything praiseworthy about your marriage that you need to bring forth? Our marriage is whatever. Use the praiseworthy statements that relate to that. And the more you utter those things that you think, the better your marriage will be. You speak them, you talk about them, and you value those. Darren?
When I think about excellent, and I think about Stacy, I think she sees a list like this, and she wants them all to be excellent. And she works really hard to show that, to make that happen. And I think you see it in our family and the effort that she puts forth to take care of us and our kids and just the level that she wants our marriage to be on. She's somebody that's always looking out for others and what she can do to help and to put others first. And she's just somebody who has a real high standard of these things, and she tries to pull me up there. But I can just see all these things that I've grown in because of her. Being with her, because she has this high standard, and she wants all these to be excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you think sometimes when she says something about you, think, are you talking about some other man? Some other man you're talking about? She's talking about you, but the more you talk about these things in front of this person, that your husband or your wife, the more, and it's not this, oh, you're just telling me something to make me feel good. But if the more you state it, the more it's becoming to be your thought, and it's also more to become to be the thought of the other person instead of the inferiority. We're not trying to blow your head up to big proportions here. We're just trying to give you an understanding of clarifying what God's image in you is, and God's image as you as a husband and a wife can be, that hopefully magnifies all this or demonstrates it. Yes, Brett.
I think we kind of hit a trifecta here for us, her, myself, and marriage. I'm really not good about talking about myself. I think listening. James tells us to have be quick to hear, slow to speak.
Yeah.
There's a lot of listening that goes on in our marriage, especially in our kids. We'll be in our room more often than not. All of us just in the bed, just talking. We got animals and all kinds of stuff. It's a zoo. But I mean, there's lots of listening. There's lots of talking. There's lots of things going on. And I know in her individual relationships, we'll talk to her about things, and in my individual relationships, I always tell people I don't got the answers, but I got the ears.
Yeah.
I'll listen to you.
Yes.
So,
that empathy is great. I mean, that just trying to grab that out. And you kind of come into something here. I'm right at 12 o'clock. You come right into something. You segue right into James chapter 1, verse 19. Very good for me right here at this point. Think about your response. Think about where you respond. What's James 1:19 say? Be slow to speak, slow to, and quick to hear. Slow to speak, slow to wrath, quick to hear. Be quick to listen to what's going on. So that way you think about your response before you respond. I know there's a tendency sometimes just to be very caught up in the emotion that we just spit out. A lot of times the negative things more than we do the positive. But there's a lot to be said for thinking about what love does. The thinking sometimes needs to be something that, like this passage we'll talk about, you consider it, you meditate on it, you remember, you examine, you reflect, you study, you learn, you envision, you imagine, you grow. All those words are words that relate to thinking. Thinking is going to be slowed down enough that you can do those things. And as a result, it becomes to be the actions that are self-controlled, patient, loyal, exploring, understanding, discovering, steady, enduring, commitment, and forbearance. When you slow down and you think, and meditate on all this, then the actions become to be exactly what James chapter 1 verse 19 is talking about. Exactly. And one of the things that you might want to think about is let your thinking be in you and in your marriage, like Colossians chapter 3, 12 to 15. And in that passage, he discusses the things that relate to discipleship for sure. But he says, put on as God's elect, holy, beloved, a heart of compassion, kindness, lowliness, meekness, patience, forbearance, forgiving each other. And as he says in verse 14, above all these things put on love, which is the bond of perfectness. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to the which also you were called in one body, and be ye thankful. And then 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 5 says, your mind and mind needs to cast down all these imaginations. Imaginations, that's your thinking. Cast down all the imaginations and let your mind grab a hold of the obedience to Christ. And when your mind is captivated by the obedience of Christ, then your thinking becomes to be exactly what you should be for yourself, for your spouse, and for your marriage. It's a beautiful operation. It's a beautiful change, and that I hope and pray that you will take and establish in your life. We've gone over. We can talk more and more and more about this, and rightly so, because our thinking has a lot to do with this. But I want to be considerate of your children, those of you that have your children in the back, and of your time for the rest of the day. But I appreciate very much all that you have given me in your responses this afternoon, and also your time and your energy. Very much appreciate that.